Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we love you and thank you so very much. Thank you for this day. Thank you that we get to be here today. Please help us to get some truth out of the message. Father, we thank you that you are going to be with us. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Amen.
So this is part 2 of a part 3 series. If you missed part 1, it is on my YouTube page. Please feel free to catch up. Go back and watch that. I've also posted it on the church page on Facebook. If you can just check back and you can watch that and get caught up. But today we're going to be talking about the differences of administrations of the Lord. Now that might sound, whoa, what is he talking about? I'll explain that in a second, but I wanted to say something that was really cool. You know, God always gives me confirmations of some kind before I preach, to let me know what the topic is going to be, and also to reassure me that, yes, this is what I've given you to preach on. So I thought this one was extra special. So I do studies for the sermon, and then I do my separate personal studies as well. Okay? And it just so happens that my studies for the sermon intersected with my personal studies by accident or by God's divine purpose as a confirmation to me. So Ephesians, I was just happened to be in Ephesians 4 in my personal studies, and my main point comes from Ephesians 4. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
The exact point. So I was like, oh wow. You know, as I'm reading, I'm like, I didn't even plan this. This wasn't on purpose, you know. Because I just have I try to read a chapter a day and meditate on it, you know. And in this chapter is the same one that I'm going to be speaking from today. Also, I'm going to be in other places, but I just thought, wow, you know, this is coming from a main point, you know. But anyway, let's go to 1 Corinthians 12:5. Should be on the screens. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. Okay? Differences of administrations, but the same Lord. Something unique about this is the Lord Jesus gives out the administrations personally, just like the Spirit gave out the gifts personally that we talked about last week. And just like next week, God the Father gives out diversities of activities personally. Some of us are going, well, what is administrations and what is activities? Well, I'm about to tell you what administrations are, but please come next week so you can find out what the activities are, okay? Please don't say, hey, this was good enough. I got my one Sunday in out of the month. No, come back again next Sunday, please. All right? Also, catch up from last Sunday if you weren't here. Like I said, it's on the church page or my YouTube channel. If you need either one of those, please let me know. But let's go to Ephesians 4. And we will explain what administrations are. Some of y'all are scratching your head. I don't know what that means. Let's go to Ephesians 4, 7 through 16. But to each one of us grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Alright? Therefore he says, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive, and he gave gifts to men. Now this, he ascended, what does it mean? But that he also first descended into the lower parts of the earth. He who descended is also the one who ascended far above all the heavens, that he might fill all things. And he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. That's the administrations. Okay? Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. Some of y'all have heard the fivefold ministry. Anybody ever heard that? For the equipping of the saints. So this is the purpose he's done this. For the equipping of the saints, that's us. For the work of ministry. Okay. For the edifying of the body of Christ. Thank you. till we all come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, that we should no longer be children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, in the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting, but speaking the truth in love, may grow up in all things into Him who is the head, Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. Now that's a lot to take in. And feel free to go back and read these in your studies. And if you don't take notes, please do that. It helps you, believe it or not, to take notes. And if you don't take notes, please take advantage of the fact that we do film these. So if for some reason I'm going too fast for you and you're like, man, he just goes way too fast, I have to get a lot of good stuff in. Okay? And believe it or not, I try to make myself go slowly. Alright? But if you don't catch everything, please go back and watch the videos later at your leisure. That way you can stop, pause it, read it for yourself, and then keep going, right? But one thing I do want to highlight is He has given these administrations for our own building up, so that our body grows. Now the body is all of us together, all the members together. Now something that I find very interesting is that He has given each one of us one of these things. Somebody is an apostle. Somebody is a prophet. Somebody is an evangelist. Somebody's a pastor. Somebody's a teacher. Everybody in this room is one of those things. Now you may be saying, hey, I don't know that much about the Bible. I don't know this. I haven't been to seminary. I haven't been to ministry school. I haven't read the Bible all the way through. I don't know. How can I be one of these things? If you are a saved individual, God has placed one of these administrations inside of you to be used effectively for the body, for the growing of the body. Not necessarily will you be every one of these things. Alright? Now, there's many of you out there who will never be a pastor or a prophet or an apostle or a teacher. But every one of us, at the very least, is called to be an evangelist. Do you know what that means? It's the simplest form is spreading of the gospel. Okay, and we'll get to that. We'll break that down in a minute. But at the very least, every one of us is called to be one of these things. You may be a teacher, but your crowd may just be those of your family. Okay? You may be an evangelist, but it may just be those of your family. Who knows? But we're all called to one of these administrations. Okay? You actually may be a prophet and you don't even know it. God may be speaking to you, telling you to say certain things, and you're ignoring it. Right? You may have this gift that Jesus gave you, but you're pushing it down because you don't know how to work in that gift. Alright? You don't know how to work in that administration. You have it, but you don't know how to use it. Well, let's go ahead and break down these certain ones. Let's break down the apostle. Let's give a definition here. There's a lot of times people like to say this particular office is no longer relevant for today, or is no longer active for today. But I've never seen that in the Bible. I've never seen, okay, apostles, y'all are done away with. No, it's actually, it seems like it's just substantiated by the Scriptures, as we've seen in Ephesians. Paul has wrote to the Ephesians and saying, hey, look, guys, y'all got some apostles among you. You got some prophets among you, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers, all right? And I bet they were sitting there going, really? we get to be one of these things? I thought it was just for you, Paul. No, God has placed an administration among each of the members for the growth of the whole body. Okay? If we were to just rely on the pastor of the church for all of the growth that we were to receive, we would be a dying church. And I don't want to see that. We all need to be evangelists at the very least, right? You need to take it upon yourself that, hey, I have a part in this mission. And it's not just to warm the pews, right? It's not just to fill a seat. But I have a job to do. I have a plan that God has specifically made for me that He wants me to walk in. Isn't that awesome? You have a sense of fulfillment, a duty that you get to follow through with. But will you take that on you? Will you say, yes, Lord, tell me what my administration is and help me to walk in it. Help me to fulfill that administration you have placed inside of me. Or will you just be content with just growing yourself? If you do that, you will be neglecting the growth of the body. Because there's a certain administration that God has placed inside of you that will be a great benefit to the rest of us. Right? Let's just say that for an example. Let's say your particular administration is an evangelist, but you're not evangelizing. There's many people that you could be reaching right now that would be coming to this church that could potentially have one of those other administrations that will help also further the advancing of the body. But you didn't evangelize that person. Do you want to find out in heaven that there are certain people that you were supposed to reach and then you didn't reach them, and then, wow, what a heartbreak, right? That'd be a letdown to me. Or if one day you're just sitting in bed and God says, you know what? That person you walked by in the store who I was telling you to speak to, he was going to do great things. But you didn't reach out to him. That would hurt my feelings. That would hurt me to know that I passed up an opportunity that the Lord was nudging me to do. Right? Now, can God get those people without using you? Of course. God can do anything. Because God's not relying on any one individual to get His job done. But, however, you never know what other wrongs that person's going to do along the way that could have been prevented if you would have been the one to reach out to them. Right? You could have stopped a whole lot of other things from happening if you would have just stepped out into the administration God has placed inside of you. Now that can be scary, right? Whoa, what do you mean? Matter of fact, I was scared to take on the pastor position. I was scared, leery, didn't want to do it. Because I didn't feel like I was ready. I felt like, God, there's anybody else but me out there. You can use anybody else. Don't use me. You know, I was worried about the extra responsibilities that the pastor holds, because he's responsible for the whole flock, right? That's a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility just to be responsible for your children and your wife. Then you have to add on the responsibility of the care of the whole flock as well. I don't know if I'm ready to take that responsibility yet, God, but He was saying, this is what I want for you. This is what I want you to do. I could either ignore that, or I could step out in faith and let Him move through me in this. Despite any fears, despite any hesitations, despite all that, you have to be willing and obedient. Do you want that today?
Yes.
Do you want to be willing and obedient? You know, you're going to come across certain situations if you're called to be an evangelist that are going to be hard for you. You're going to find rejection. That's inevitable. No matter what office you have, no matter what administration you hold, you're going to find rejection. And sometimes that rejection is harsh. Sometimes that rejection is mean and evil and can hurt you, right? But if God has placed you in that, He has called you for that purpose, He's going to be right there with you every step of the way. Do you want it? All right. I'm taking a long time on this one, but here we go. The definition of an apostle. One sent on a mission. One of an authoritative New Testament group sent out to preach the gospel and made up especially of Christ's 12 original disciples and Paul. A person who initiates a great moral reform, or who first advocates an important belief or system. Apostles are often church planners. We have that still going on today. There are many people God has called to go plant churches, to go be a leader among the people, among the brethren. There's still that today. God still uses that administration today. We just don't recognize them as that. We just say, hey, yeah, that's brother whoever, but he's a church planter. We've kind of supplanted apostle with church planter, but really it's the same thing in a lot of ways. Okay? We don't see a lot of that because mainly what we see is evangelists, missionaries, and pastors and teachers. Alright? We don't really see prophets as much, and we don't really see apostles as much because those two kind of scare us. Alright? We kind of pretend those two don't exist sometimes. But they're very relevant and they're very present still today, even if we don't acknowledge them as such. Right? Let's go to Romans 1:1. Paul, a bondservant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated to the gospel of God. Apostles will be separated to the gospel of God. They will be focused and geared towards that, as all of us should be. That will be their sole mission. In a lot of ways, they are like an evangelist. Alright? But their purpose is to set up churches, like Paul did. He went into Ephesus. He set the church up there. Corinth. All these different places. Thessalonica. He went up and he set these churches. He got them going. Hey guys, I want y'all to do this. You know, the Lord's leading us to do this. Let's go ahead. And they all got together and they formed a church body there. And then he would keep periodically writing to them, seeing how they're doing. And he even himself considered a father in the sense of he looked at them like his own children because he took care of them, because he got them going. And they looked up to him and thought of him in such a way with high regard and respect. So yes, there still can be the office of apostle today. Romans 1:5. Through him we have received grace and apostleship for obedience to the faith among all the nations for his name. So thank God for the apostles, because they are traveling to all the nations. They are setting up churches still today. 2 Corinthians 12:12. Truly the signs of an apostle were accomplished among you with all perseverance in signs and wonders and mighty deeds. I believe that God will do certain miracles and mighty deeds through these men to let us know, okay, hey, God's using this guy. You know, God's with this man. You know, we need to pay attention to what he's saying. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the administration of prophet. Let's check out a definition for that. One who utters divinely inspired revelations. One who can foretell future events. And simply one who speaks what God tells them to speak. So, more often than not, the office of prophet is one who can hear clearly what God's saying, and then he says what God's saying. Right? That's the easiest way of knowing what a prophet is. You can hear what God's saying, and you just speak what God's saying. Right? 1 Corinthians 14:1-5. Pursue love and desire spiritual gifts. We talked about those last week. But especially that you may prophesy. I find that very interesting. He's saying, desire the spiritual gifts, but especially that you may prophesy. That you have this particular gift. Do you desire that gift? Have you ever desired it? He says that you especially desire this gift. That means it's of utmost importance. Do you know that we have a need of people that can hear from God? We have a need for that. We have a need that they can hear from God and communicate what God is saying. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes it's hard for me to hear God. Anybody else out there? I hear from God in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's hard for me to hear His voice. Anybody ever had a hard time with that? Or have never heard God's voice? Anybody have never heard God's voice? Be honest. It's okay. You have never heard God's voice. Pray for that today. Say, God, you say my sheep hear your voice. Let me hear it. Do you desire to hear it? Do you desire that you may be able to prophesy? You might just be somebody that God wants to use to prophesy. You might be a prophet. You don't even know it. Wouldn't that be crazy? If God said, yep, you're a prophet. That'd be cool to me.
Amen.
There's been a lot of prophets, but that one kind of scares us, doesn't it? Be honest. Are you scared of that one?
Yes.
Okay. Don't be scared of the things of God. He's got some things out there that can be scary. But we need to embrace them because they are things that build us up as a body. Don't you want to grow? There's a lot of churches that are dying. I don't want to be one of the churches that have to close our doors and say we got to hang it up because God just ain't moving over here. I don't want to be that church. I want to be the church that God is moving and everybody knows it. Right?
Amen.
I want that to be us here. I'm not content with just regular, ordinary, hey, come hear the message, everybody goes home, I'll see you next week. I want moves of God to take place. But we have to be on board with that. We can't be scared of that. Do you know that whenever Moses came down from the mountain, he was in the presence of God and his face was glowing. And everybody was scared. Hey Moses, we want you to be our go-between. We don't want what you just had. That scares us. All that thunderings and lightnings, all that was going on with you and God, we don't want that. We want a mediator. But God's calling out to you today and saying, you don't need a mediator. I want a one-on-one with you. Does that scare you or do you welcome it? I welcome it. I welcome it to the extent and full extent that I want everything you have to offer me. But we all have to want that, right? I want everything. Blow my doors off, all right? Give me everything you got. All right, so especially that we may prophesy. For he who speaks in a tongue does not speak to men, but to God, for no one understands him. However, in the Spirit he speaks mysteries. But he who prophesies speaks edification and exhortation and comfort to men. Anybody want that? He who speaks in a tongue edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies the church. Do you know, church, that we need edification? I wish you all spoke with tongues, but even more that you prophesied. He's saying, I wish that y'all would more prophesy. For he who prophesies is greater than he who speaks with tongues, unless indeed he interprets and the church may receive edification. He's saying it's much better for us if we have somebody who can prophesy in here. We don't have that right now. Would that scare some of y'all? Would y'all stop coming if we had somebody who came in here and prophesied to it? Would you stop coming, or would you say, hey, maybe there's something to this? Now it can get scary because it's something that we're not used to. But it's definitely something God has to offer us. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 14, 29 through 40. This is more understanding of, the prophet's place. Let 2 or 3 prophets speak, and let the others judge. But if anything is revealed to another who sits by, let the first keep silent. For you can all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be encouraged. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. Alright? For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. Let your women keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but they are to be submissive, as the law also says. And if they want to learn something, let them ask their own husbands at home. For it is shameful for a woman to speak in church. Or did the word of God come originally from you? Or was it you only that it reached? If anyone thinks himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things which I write to you are the commandments of the Lord. But if anyone is ignorant, let him be ignorant. Therefore, brethren, desire earnestly to prophesy, and do not forbid to speak with tongues. Let all things be done decently and in order. Alright? So this is kind of a standard of how prophets are to speak amongst the church. If there's 2 or 3 that feel like they can hear from God, well, let them speak, but let them do it in turn. Each one of you has that option, has a chance to speak. Alright? But everything is to be done indecently and in order. Alright? So, isn't that pretty interesting? He says, let 2 or 3 prophets speak. Alright? He's saying there's going to be a bunch of you in there. And there should be. There should be a bunch of us who can hear from God. Because at the base, remember that's what we said a prophet was? Someone who hears what God says and speaks it. But that is one of the things that is very neglected in churches today. At least in the modernized American church. We might hear of somebody who does it, but we don't see it as much. Do you know why? Because a lot of times we hear God, but we're too scared to say what He told us to say. To be honest. A lot of times we may hear God, but He's saying things that are hard for us to tell other people. For example, what if God one day told me to tell one of you, just out of the blue, hey, God knows what you're doing, and He's wanting you to stop. Would that scare you? God knows what you're doing, but He wants you to stop. Would you stop coming? Be honest, would you stop coming if God called you out like that? Now, that right there would scare me. Because I know that that's a potential thing of happening. If God was to say, Brandon, I want you to tell so-and-so that they're doing this and that they need to stop. And if I was to do that, most of the time, that person won't be back. Even if it's true. Even if it's 100% true, won't be back. You know why? Because we have a hard time of being rebuked. We can't stand it. We feel like we're grown-ups. We're not little kids anymore. You can't tell me what I can and can't do anymore. I'm a grown-up. I can live my life however I want to. It's not the case. Whenever you give your life to Jesus Christ, He says you were bought at a price. You are no longer your own anymore. You are His. Do you want that? I do. I want to be corrected. That sounds weird, doesn't it? I want to be rebuked. If you see me sinning, please rebuke me. Would you? That sounds weird, doesn't it? But not many of us can handle that. Nobody, at least that I've seen, can handle rebuke well. And if you can, you are a rarity and a gem amongst gems. Yeah. And God bless you.
Amen.
If you can be rebuked without getting mad, or without throwing a hissy fit, or telling everybody in the world, how dare them tell me this? Well, God bless you, because you're a rare gem and I love you. And thank you for being that way. Alright? But for the most part, most people, and I've been there too, when somebody rebukes you, you don't receive it well, do you? To be honest. Be honest. Let's be honest today. Can we all be honest in here? If somebody rebukes you, you don't receive it well, do you? Because For the most part, we want to all think we're perfect, don't we?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything wrong. What are you talking about? You know, and we try to justify. Oh, we love to justify.
Yeah.
If we can justify, we will justify. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Some of us should have been lawyers, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
All right? Learn to be able to be rebuked. Learn that lesson today. Learn the goodness that comes from being rebuked. Because no, we're not all perfect. We all make mistakes. We can agree on that, right?
Oh, yeah. Amen.
We all make mistakes. Lord, even me, as the pastor of the church, still make mistakes, and I'm going to tell them myself right now. All right? So you know that I'm not perfect or trying to just tell you, y'all need to do better, and I'm over here thinking I'm so good, but I'm not. All right? Driving down the road Friday, going to pick up Brenda and them, my two little ones. This guy, I'm driving, okay, and the roads have been wet. And you know how when the lane merges, I'm clearly in front. This guy in a company van comes flying by like this, and I have to get over so he doesn't sideswipe me. And I mean to tell you, it took everything I had to not flip him off. Everything I had in this world was holding my finger back. I'm going to tell you. I mean, if I ever wanted to in this world, it was at that point in time. And I would have felt so good if I would have just did it for 1 second. And then I would have been, oh Lord, I shouldn't have done that. But thankfully, I can tell you I didn't flip them off, but I'm going to tell you how close it was. All right? It was that close. And I would admit that to y'all. Because, I mean to tell you, I'm not perfect. And I wanted to. There's a lot of times where I want to do something. I'm like, oh, I should have told them off. I had a good one. You ever get a good one and you just want to tell somebody off? Ooh, I got a good one. But don't. All right? You can refrain. All right? Just try not to. All right? There's some times where you got something you want to say real bad, well, just don't say it. Okay?
Amen.
Just know you had a good one. All right? That's good enough. I could have got them. And leave it at that. Okay? All right, let's move on. We can move on now. Evangelists. Like I said, majority of people in this world are probably evangelists who are in the Lord, who are Christians. At the very least, you're an evangelist. Now, we're not just talking about the Billy Grahams of this world, okay? Now, he's an evangelist, but he's an evangelist on the grand scheme of things, all right? He's got a TV in front of him. He's got a camera in front of him. He's on the TV. He's got books out there. Everybody knows about him. You may be an unknown evangelist, but that's okay, right? If you're walking and serving the Lord in that particular administration. So this is a person who brings or announces good news. Okay? Just someone who speaks or preaches the gospel. At the very base, the easiest understanding, that is what an evangelist is. Anybody want to be an evangelist in this room? All the hands in this room should be up, because we all should want to be that, because at the very least, all of us are that. Or we should be. Alright, let's go to 2 Timothy 4:5. But you be watchful in all things. Endure afflictions. Do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry. We have a lot of people in this room who are not fulfilling their ministry. You know who you are. I mean, I don't have to point you out, thankfully, because I want you to come back, okay? A lot of you in this room have a ministry that you are called to fulfill, but are not. Right? If I would have chose not to take the position of pastor, I would have not have been fulfilling the ministry that God wanted me to fulfill. Yeah, I could have still been an evangelist. Okay, I still could have done that. Still could have served the Lord in some way, but I'm not doing what God wanted me to do. Right? I would have neglected all of you in this room and done all of you a disservice. I would have never had a chance to meet any one of you. I would have never had a chance for God to use me to pour into your lives. y'all would have all never have ever met me probably, and never have had a chance to grow in this particular way that God wanted to use me to get you to grow in. And that would have been a disservice to you just because I didn't want to do it. Because I was scared or had some hesitancy or whatever excuse or whatever justification I was trying to make. If I wouldn't have stepped out and said, yes, Lord, give me everything you want me to do, and I'm going to do it, and be obedient, and that's what He's calling us to do. Obedience. Be obedient. If He has a ministry He has placed inside of you, and some of you may already even know it. You may even know the ministry that He has placed inside of you. And if He has, then it is your duty to be obedient and step out in faith despite all the things that you can think of, all your hesitancies, all the negative things that the devil will throw at you to try to keep you from being unfulfilled in that ministry. You got to cast it all aside and say, yes, Lord, give me everything you want me to do for you, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to start today. No more excuses. I'm going to be what you want me to be. Do y'all want that this morning? I hope so, because guess what that will do? That will help grow our body. That will help us. We need you. We need you. Let me ask you a question. What if one day your hands stopped working? Just stopped working altogether. Didn't have any more use for it. And it was just there. You could see it, and it just stopped working. Would you be hindered? And everybody said yes. I would be hindered. Even if just my pinky stopped working, I'd be hindered. I got a bad wrist, and I mean to tell you it's bad. Cody's been having to deal with an issue too, so he knows what I'm talking about. Anybody got anything on their body that is hindered right now? Everything. Some of y'all, oh Lord, I barely got here this morning. I barely rolled out of bed and got here. So we know what it's like to have a body part hindered, right? That's exactly what's happening when one of us doesn't step out in that particular administration that God has placed inside of us. We are hindered. It's easy to put it in that understanding, right? We're hindered. I don't want us to be hindered, do you? I want us to run full throttle in the best capabilities that we can move in. As a church, as a body of believers. I want to be effective for the kingdom of God, don't you?
Amen.
I want us to be soul winners here at First Christian.
Yes.
I want us all to be soul winners. Even if you decide, hey, I don't like it there anymore, and you go to be at another church, I still want you to be walking in your ministry. You know why? Because it's helping the whole body. It's helping the kingdom. And I'm right there with you. Because I'm your brother or sister, whether you like it or not. Right? We're family. So when you are successful, we're all successful. Now, success is measured in a lot of ways. It's not just always money, right?
Right.
It's not always entitlement. All right? If you win one person to the Lord, that's successful. It says the whole host of heaven rejoices of one sinner who repents. The whole host of heaven. Isn't that amazing? All right, we got two more to talk about. Pastors and teachers, and then we'll go ahead and close. Pastors, a spiritual overseer, especially a clergyman serving at a local church, someone who shepherds the flock, or an elder of the church. So there's going to be a lot of terms that we hear in the Bible. One may be pastor, one's overseer, one's shepherd, one's bishop, one's elder. Those are all interchangeable. Okay? Sometimes we get confused with these words, but a lot of times in the Greek they would translate, and these would be transliterations of what those meanings were. Every one of them means about the same thing. Okay? Alright, so when you hear those words, just think, okay, we're talking about a pastor here. Alright? 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7. This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Okay, now these are kind of qualifications. Now, if you take these and you say, hey, he's being kind of quarrelsome today, so he shouldn't be our pastor anymore. Well, you're not going to ever find a perfect pastor who gets every single one of these things checked off and, hey, he's perfect at it. We're going to mess up on some of these things, okay? We're going to make a mistake here and there. So there has to be understanding in that, because as you yourselves know, y'all aren't perfect either, right? So nobody should expect a pastor to be perfect. Like, hopefully you're not thinking, we got to get Brandon out of here because he almost flipped somebody off. Right? Right? Because I still have a daggum flesh that I live in that still makes me mess up and do things and think bad things. And, I still mess up, okay, unfortunately. Thankfully, when I die, I'll get all that over with and I'll have a glorified body and I'll be perfected and all that good stuff. But while I'm here, I still make mistakes. And sometimes Randy loves to remind me of it. No, she's real good. She don't get on me too much. Just every day. I can say all that, but she's not in the room right now. She gonna get mad at me though. She's hearing me in some room. She gonna come running in here, Brandon. Right, she sure can. I better be quiet. All right, I got 2 more scriptures. One more for pastors, all right? Titus 1, 5 through 16. For this reason I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking, and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. If a man is blameless, and husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of dissipation or insubordination, for a bishop must be blameless, as a steward of God, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but hospitable, a lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-controlled, holding fast the faithful word as he has been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and convict those who contradict. But there are many insubordinate, both idle talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole households, teaching things which they ought not, for the sake of dishonest gain. One of them, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This testimony is true. Therefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith, not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men who turn from the truth. To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. But even their mind and conscience are defiled. They profess to know God, but in works they deny Him, being abominable, disobedient, and disqualified for every good work. I don't want to be disqualified. I don't want to be abominable. I don't want to be disobedient. I want to be qualified for every good work, don't you?
Amen.
I want to serve the Lord. All right, now we finally come to teachers. Someone who instructs people in knowledge. Pretty simple. James 3:1. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. All right? This was another reason why I didn't want to become a pastor. Because I understood that I would have a stricter judgment against me. I was like, God, I don't know about that. It scares me. I don't know. I don't want to be held in more scrutiny. I don't want to mess up or do something and cause somebody else to stumble because they were looking up to me. And they mess up because I did something that messed up. And that was all fear-based. And we cannot live our lives as Christians as fear in anything. We have to say, all right, I may mess up, but you're going to forgive me. You're going to help me. You'll help them. You'll do whatever you need to do through me. And I have to walk out and step out in faith. Right? God may be calling you to be a teacher. He may be calling you to be a teacher of one of these children back here. He may be calling you to teach Sunday school. Has He? Has He been calling you to do that? And you've been neglecting it? You're hindering those kids back there. You're hindering the body. You're taking away from one of those people who needs to be sitting in here, but they're having to be out there every Sunday. See, we don't think about that, do we? We kind of think, well, I don't know if I'm ready, or we think about all the negatives, but think about the positives. Think about one kid who hears one thing that you have to say to them, and that sticks with them for the rest of their lives, and they never forget it, and they go on to do great things for the Lord because of what you spoke into their life. Don't you want that opportunity? Whew. Don't pass it up. Don't pass up what God is putting inside of you to do, because I guarantee you He's putting something there. He hasn't called you just to warm the seats. There is always going to be something that God places inside of you that the whole body will benefit from. Even if you don't think that you deserve it. Even if you think that you don't have the talent or the understanding or the wisdom or the knowledge. Don't worry about any of that. If God is calling you to something, He will raise you to the task. He will raise you to the occasion. He will give you the knowledge and the wisdom and the understanding. He will cause you to be able to walk in the administration that He has called you to. I want to tell you about one man. His name was Moses. God called him to be His voice, to go speak to Pharaoh. But he was timid. He said, I don't know, man. That scares me. I don't know if I can do that by myself. So out of God's frustration, He allowed Aaron to go with him because Moses was too timid. God made a concession, although His best point of attack was using Moses by himself. Can you imagine what the outcome might have been if Moses would have obeyed? Maybe it wouldn't have been 12 plagues that the Egyptians had to go through. Maybe it would have been just 2. Maybe Moses, if he was bold enough, Pharaoh would have thought, man, this guy's by himself. He ain't scared to come up here and tell me what to do. He must be hearing from God. It might have moved Pharaoh in a different way. It may have caused things to happen in a different way. There's always God's best plan of attack. But if you notice throughout the Bible, there's a lot of times where we step out and try to do things our own way, or don't do things the way God wanted. What if Jonah would have said, yes, sir, right when God told him to go? Yes, sir, I'll go to those Ninevites. They may have not turned away from God later on. You know that they did turn to God when He went, but then later on, not too long down the road, they turned back away. Maybe if Jonah would have went to them right when God told him to, right at the appointed time, do the thing God told you to do, maybe things would have turned out differently. But God knows the best point of attack, doesn't He? So we need to agree with Him right when He tells us to do it, and do the thing He's moving on us to do, and it'll turn out a lot better. Will He make concessions and allow for our timidness? Of course. But it's not going to be the exact best thing. I want the best, don't y'all?
Amen.
Whatever you want, God. That's what I want. Do you surrender? It's easy to sing about it, but do you really surrender? It's the question. Sometimes it's hard to hear you got to do something, or You have to do this. You got to step out in faith. You got to surrender. You got to do this. Stop doing that. Start doing this. Sometimes that's hard to hear, right? To be honest, it is. But what will you do with that? What will you do with the sermon that you heard today? What will you do with the information? Will you just say, oh, that's okay, whatever, and keep doing the same thing? Or will you be changed? Will you allow it to move you in your life today and say, I want everything that God has to offer me. I want to move in everything that God has placed in me. I want the gifts and the administrations. Right? Now next week we're going to be talking about the functions. Okay? Alright, so y'all going to come for that?
Yes.
Please do. Please don't say this Sunday was good enough. Come next Sunday too. Back them up. Put them together. Change your schedule if you got to. And if you didn't catch the first message, what do you got to do? YouTube or church Facebook page. Alright. You got two options. And if you can't get to either one of those, ask me, call me, I can send it to you. Okay? If you can't figure it out from there, I can send it to you. Alright, but please get caught up and please come next Sunday too. I don't want y'all to be just getting 1/3 of the message. Alright, I want y'all to get the full picture. Alright? Let's go ahead and close in prayer. Father, thank you for everything you're doing for us. Thank you for every teaching you have to bring us, every sermon, every word that you give us. Father, even the hard stuff. Help us to be able to take. Help us to be able to run with it. Help us to know what to do with it. And Father, if we don't know what administration we have, Father, reveal it to us. Because we desire to serve you. Father, and until we know exactly, help us to all be evangelists. Help us all to be spreaders of the gospel, spreaders of your word, to represent you in our lives and everything we do. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Amen.